Hey there, boys, girls, and flying squirrels. My name's Joe Keyport, and you're listening to the Ear Coffee Podcast. For this week's episode, I caught up with the band Fourth Curtis to talk about their fantastic EP, Invisible Acts. Even though the band describes it as a bit of a detour between their debut record, I Won the Pageant, and their forthcoming LP, Invisible Acts is a statement that Lex, Maddie, and Ty are here to take what's theirs. Now, before we jump into the interview, I want to take a moment to mention that the band will be playing a show at Eagles Club 34 with Cat and the Hurricane, Candice Griffin, and Poor Will. You can find more info about that gig in our show notes. Now, without further ado, it's Fourth Curtis, right here on the Ear Coffee Podcast. Welcome to the most recent episode of the Ear Coffee Podcast. I'm joined by Lex, Maddie, and Ty of the band Fourth Curtis. How are you all doing today?
Hi.
Hello.
Good.
We're doing all right.
We don't want to talk over each other.
We're alive.
Yeah. I think in general pretty okay. Thumbs
Yeah.
up.
You know, that's always good to hear. I've been waiting to talk to you all. I caught you open for Jeremy Messersmith at his, was that
Oh my god, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, at Ice
And so-
House. Delightful show.
Yeah, so it was funny because I was like, who is this band? Because I hadn't heard of you before, and I was like, who is this band? But I drug my roommate with, who never goes to concerts, and it was like, well, that was one of the bands that my roommate Madeline will see you, like your name pop up, like, oh, we saw them at the Ice House show, and where it's always kind of fun to remember, you know.
Come
No,
through,
that was
Madeline.
great.
Yeah.
So we won't get into too much detail as you all have kind of talked about kind of the band's origin story, but if you would indulge me a little bit, could you give me like an abridged of how Fourth Curtis came together?
Yeah, for sure. So Fourth Curtis started as a solo project that was just Lex doing their thing. And then Lex and I met at college together because we were kind of the two loudest non-binary people at college. And then we...
Sorry.
Oh, go ahead.
Which college was that?
McNally Smith College of Contemporary Music. But let's not speak ill of the dead.
I was like, pour one out.
Exactly. Yeah, we then met Maddie through a friend of ours, and it was just meant to be.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So when was like the first moment you realized you had something with Fourth Curtis? Was it kind of a performance or hearing demos back, or kind of tell me about when you realized like this band could do something?
I think I realized, like, one of the first songs we played was Come Out.
It was the very first song we played.
From I Won the Pageant, and I just remember feeling so good. Like, in the early days, I would feel like my legs tingle whenever I heard Maddie drum, and it just, like, felt so good and right. And, yeah, from our first practice, I definitely felt it.
Me too.
Awesome.
Yes.
So you put out Invisible Acts in a 5-song EP in November of last year, which before we like get into the content, I noticed that Ty, you recorded it, arranged parts of it, produced and some other things, and then the drums were recorded later. So talk to me about, well, one, recording the EP, and then why did you choose to do the drums separately like that?
Yeah, for sure. What it came down to with the drums was just like, I don't own that many microphones. So I can, let this be a lesson to people. You can record basically anything you want in your bedroom.
Except for drums.
As
Except
long
for
as you're
drums.
not a drummer.
Yeah, drums, you just need, like, enough microphones for each drum, and I just didn't want to blow that much money on buying mics we were going to use for one thing.
Mm-hmm.
So what we ended up doing, we recorded, like, sort of scratch tracks of everything first, took those to a real, grown-up studio, had Maddie do drums, and then after that, erased all the scratch stuff and started from the drums.
So do you do a lot of like the demos for the band too, or what do you do? Sorry, trying to formulate the question here.
No worries.
Do you record a lot of the demos for the band? Is recording something you why did you choose to take on the recording of this EP, I should say, for the non-drum stuff? Because you worked with another person for I Won the Pageant, right?
Yes, we did. Somebody who we met through McNally as well. We had a really wonderful experience with that fellow named Andy. He's lovely. But for this one, we really wanted to sort of take the reins and have full creative control over sort of everything that was happening in the mix, in the soundscape, in the arrangement. And I really have a deep fondness for sitting in my room by myself at 2 a.m. recording and comping my own vocals in real time. I love that stuff. It's really just delightful. And for me, mixing is really an additive process of like, okay, cool, this is like, I got the bones down, I have the drums, I have the guitar, I have the melodies. What other crap can I throw on top of this to make it sound cool and interesting and very maximal? And when you're working with another engineer who's taking on all of the mixing, you just kind of can't really do that. And for this EP especially, we really wanted to just throw as much stuff and as much glitter on top of it as we could.
Okay. Was that need to, or that desire to throw as much like glitter as you described it on top of kind of coming from the fact that I know it was mentioned previously that a lot of the songs on Invisible Acts had sat around for a minute. Was that part of the reason why you wanted to throw that much at it, or what? Why the extra?
I think it's more that like the aesthetic of Fourth Curtis, our sort of sonic, approach to this sort of stuff, is to be really bombastic and melodramatic and have a lot going on in the mix. And Invisible Acts was really a moment where we could realize that. Where with I Won the Pageant, we just didn't have the opportunity or the money, because studio time costs money, to go in and add another thing and another thing and another thing and another thing.
And I would say, I don't know. There's some bands who like are definitely the product of like one auteur kind of person, and that's definitely not the case with us. Like, I feel like we're definitely the sum of our parts. It's I write the songs and I'm really proud of them and I love them, but that's only half of it, and like the rest that makes it special is everything Ty adds on and the amazing drumming that Maddie adds. And I think the glitter is like a really important part, because that's kind of like what separates us from like more garagey kind of bands. Ty gives us the I don't know how to describe what Ty gives us without sounding homophobic.
You can be a little homophobic as a treat.
I don't want to do it in front of Joe.
That's totally fair. It's a bit of extra oomph.
Yeah.
I like to think of us as sort of like the thinking gaze rock music.
Yeah.
Sure. Yeah.
Okay. Ty was mixing in studio recording something you were going to McNally for? Or
yes, that's what I studied at McNally.
Okay. So what like I mentioned, you had talked about some of the songs on this EP sitting around for a little bit. What made you want to take them off the shelf and kind of dust them off and put them out as a collection with Invisible Acts?
I almost always want to use the songs I write for Fourth Curtis, but sometimes I can't figure out what something's missing, so I just kind of give up on it. But Ty would always pick up on songs I didn't like that I wrote and like try to add it and like try to convince me. And there's definitely songs they've worked on of mine that I still didn't think I wanted to add to Fourth Curtis's repertoire. But in the case of Goth Fuck and Marie Antoinette, I think those songs were definitely brought back by Ty from the dead. Like, I hated how the chorus of Goth Fuck ended, and Ty just added a little Ty to the end, and I thought it was like totally redeemed. And before Fourth Curtis was a thing, I think I did like duets of Marie Antoinette with Ty.
Yeah, that was the first Fourth Curtis song I ever learned. I like to joke that the piano part on Marie Antoinette is like 4 years in the making.
Yeah.
It went through a lot of revisions to get where it is.
A lot of my best college moments were just sitting with Ty in a practice room, and that was before we were ever doing anything official together.
I thought that I wasn't going to be ever be a member of Fourth Curtis. I was kind of surprised when Lex invited me. I was like, well, I just do random crap. I just play block chords or whatever. But then I had to step my pussy up.
I assumed you were always in the band.
So I wanted to go back a little bit, not crazy amount, but I Won the Pageant has this kind of very sardonic approach to how you package a lot of the heavier themes. And while that same sense of humor isn't always present on Invisible Acts, I mean, there is at times. Was there any like conscious retooling you did in order to get these songs to still kind of fit into the Fourth Curtis kind of narrative is the wrong way to say it, but like
No, I always
universe,
think about the
or-
Fourth Curtis narrative. You're totally
Narrative?
right in saying that.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah, I don't know. I think just the central themes of each record are pretty different.
Okay.
And I Win the Pageant was like a lot more about like my mental health and like, you know, suicide and like depression and family grief and stuff. But I think the overall themes of Invisible Acts are a little less serious. If I don't want to delegitimize my own work by saying that, but
No.
sex is not as important as like death, you know? I mean, some could argue, but it's just like a lighter concept by virtue, but I had to do very little lyric rewriting for Invisible Acts. Like, the only thing I wrote with intentions of putting it on this EP was Nonstop, which was supposed to be kind of like... I thought of it as a foreword to a series of short stories. And Nonstop kind of, like, means nothing to me. I mean, I love it. I love it as a song. But it's, like, overall meaning is just, like... me talking about who Fourth Curtis is, you know? It doesn't...
It's a thesis statement.
Yes, exactly. It's not, like, really telling that much of a story compared to other stuff.
It most definitely like references the fact that you're like yourselves are in these songs with just like that opening line, "Blood on my guitar strings." It's very evocative of a certain narrative, especially as like the opener to the EP. I wanted to ask, because at first, like, so you're posting on Instagram, kind of leading up to the November release, how each song kind of had this reference, or you use historical figures kind of as a vehicle to drive these songs. Why did you pick kind of the historical figures? I mean, some of them are specific in reference, like Marie Antoinette, Julius Caesar, like No Artist kind of has a reference to Lizzie Borden, and on Instagram you specifically pick characters. Why? What drew you to doing that?
Yeah, so one of the big things was that we were talking with our band manager, and we all kind of agreed that we needed to just step up our social media game. So I was thinking about, like, what could be a fun way to sort of tease fans about, like, what's going to be happening on the new record, what the track names are. And I was just like, oh, well, what if we just did art of my dog Jojo, who is this album's mascot, as, like, these various historical figures who sort of have a larger-than-life presence. Like, for example, Terrar, we had all just found out about Terrar recently, because I think, like, his Wikipedia went viral or something.
Yeah.
And we were like, oh my gosh, this mythos of this dude who just ate a bunch of weird stuff is amazing.
I had never identified with a historical figure more. Even though I've written about other historical figures, I was just like, this guy never felt full, and he was always eating. Like, you know, I felt kinship with him so much.
For sure. Yeah, so it wasn't necessarily like Nonstop is about Terrar or Gothfuck is about Karl Marx so much as it was let's think of some fun historical figures to dress my dog up as, and Lex really, really killed it on the art, and it was like, yeah, this was a good concept. There's not that much like deep meaning in them though.
No, because at first, like, before I had actually like specifically listened to the EP, I was like, is this like some sort of concept record? Because I mean, a lot, like, especially when you got like the Karl Marx and some of the others, I was like, there's like kind of very intense like political things in the background. But listening to like Marie Antoinette, that's like one of the specific references I have written here. A lot of the historical figures you reference, whether it's her in name or Cleopatra or the Virgin Mary, they're much more known for their identity or sexuality in one way or another, and how you use that to twist and add your own. Kind of talk about doing like tell me a little bit more about that.
I wrote Marie Antoinette when I was, I think, like a freshman in McNally. And I was in a band for like 3 weeks with two randos I met, and it was called Slutty Coyote, which I still think is a pretty good band name.
It's pretty good.
Oh, absolutely.
And we were just three completely different people. You know, when you first join college, you like, the first friends you make are whoever like smiles the biggest. You know, it doesn't really reflect on who you hang out with. But yeah, we just had nothing in common, and we couldn't really figure out what we wanted to play. So I started trying to write this song based off of like a few chords one of the people told me to write. And then, like, it evolved into Marie Antoinette. And I was going through a lot of, gender crises at the time. College was the first time I was, like, out, because I was kind of closeted in high school as a trans person. But at the time, I was still, like, I felt very sexualized for the way I looked. Like, at the time, my boobs were bigger than my head, and, like, I wore dresses, and, like, everyone saw me as a woman, and it just always made me feel so uncomfortable. And I'd just been sexualized my entire life, especially my boobs, which were just, like, comedically huge. And
I can confirm it's pretty comedic.
And I had a breast reduction and then top surgery because I needed the stepping stone. But it was just like about me being frustrated about how much my body was being sexualized and not even in the right way. And I just felt like everyone wants me to be this like sexy like lady, and I wrote this song about like how if I played into like what everyone wanted and expected of me, it would, be a pretty shitty life and a pretty it's kind of a depressing song. It's like it's kind of a mirror universe me if I gave up on being myself and like just tried to be like a sex pot.
And is that is that played out then in the bridge or the refrain where it's like that call and response between, is it Lex that you and Ty playing off of kind of each other line for line?
Yeah, totally. I think it's funny. My mom loves that line. Like, she loves when I reference her, even though it's never in a flattering way. But she always listens to that song. It's like, I think all of you are pretty funny. Yeah, I don't know. I really appreciate the way, because I write all these words, but Ty takes over on a lot of them. And, as we work on more and more songs, Ty takes over more as a lead singer. And now we're kind of singing like 50-50, which I really like. But Ty just like, because they're such a different person and like they have a completely, almost like a mirror gender to mine, since we're both non-binary in weird ways, they just mirror my lyrics so well, in a way I could never be able to interpret them. And it makes Fourth Curtis like so much more multidimensional. So when I have Ty singing lyrics that like I wrote out of my own insecurity, and for them to turn him into
my own insecurity.
Yeah, Ty's own insecurity. It just like, I don't know how to describe it. Sorry.
It's cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's cool.
Yeah. I feel like a lot of Fourth Curtis in our weirder sort of experimental aspect is about how can I like contextualize this information in a new and interesting way. Which is one of the things that I love that's even reflected back to the songwriting of how Lex approaches, like, I'm going to gas you up now for a minute.
Sure.
The way that Lex approaches chord structure is really cool, and that Lex has an ability that is really rare to take the same chords and then put them in a slightly different order, and it's a completely different thing.
I'm so glad you think so.
Well, it's lazy in a way, where it's like, I'm just use the same chords, whatever, but the effect that it produces is really cool, and I'm really glad to, like, be able to mirror that, thematically as well.
Okay, since you brought that up, where are some examples that becomes that you can hear where you're able to switch some orders up and then able to mirror and create? Is there some examples that really stick out in your head when that thought comes to mind?
I mean, I would just call the way I write chords lazy, so I can't think of anything that's as interesting as what Ty described.
I think No Artist is a good example of this, actually. No Artist starts off in like what is clearly C sharp minor, and then during that sort of big why part goes into E major, and it completely changes the vibe of the song, even though it's the same key, like it's got the same sharps in it, but because it changes the chord that it starts on and the chords that it moves through, it feels so much like grander. No Artist like starts so tight and sad and evolves into this big melodramatic wailing session in E major.
Gotcha. And it's because No Artist ends that way, right? It's kind of that big, if I'm thinking correctly.
Yeah.
Right. It's almost it's an interesting way, especially when you end the record that way, because Nonstop is very small. It starts out very simple and small, and it just kind of, as especially the EP grows, it ends kind of grandiose in a way.
Yeah.
I like to think of our songs as just slow crescendos, kind of always.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I was reading around as I was kind of getting ready for this interview. This EP was, you describe it as an almost an aside from your second coming full, or your forthcoming full length record. Is there how do you view these kind of this collection of songs then in that kind of way? Because obviously you don't want to take away from the work you put out, because you put out a lot of work, and it's a collection of 5 really good songs. But how do you see that in like the discography that is the Fourth Curtis?
I definitely see it as a detour. It's like a wonderful detour, but that is how I see it, just because I love our second album so much, and I'm so proud of what I've done on it, and I'm so proud of how it's shaping up. We're still in the arranging scene. I mean, stage, but
Yeah.
we're we're really ramping up for it, and yeah, I don't know. It was just like I realized that we had like a perfect amount of songs for this EP, and I just kind of wanted to get them out because I knew if we held on to them and just started to try the next record, I feel like that would be a worse idea than just let this out first.
Yeah, from a less thematic and more like technical perspective too, Invisible Acts was a like really hardcore learning experience about how can we take this sort of mixing and production process internal and make that work. And like honestly, it didn't work for a long time. One of the reasons this record took a billion years was because I was and am going through a really hardcore depressive phase. And like I didn't work on this record for months. I just let it sit and stew. And one of the things that I think I'm really looking forward to bringing to the next record is this experience of like, okay, cool. Sure, it took me 2 years to make this record, and in doing so, I was able to add a lot of really cool and interesting stuff. But I can do that a lot faster next time, hopefully. Yeah.
Okay, so it was. Aside from the mental health, it provided you a way to like that learning curve. Because had you done a lot of like recording before then, or
I had done my requisite amount of student projects, but this was the first thing I really took seriously and like gave a shit about. No shade to any of the people that I worked with when I was a student or whatever, but those weren't my projects. This was something that I came into conflict with a lot of teachers about. Actually, was I was like, I have a really hard time caring about other people's music, about making other people's music. I would not be a good recording studio engineer for just like anyone. I would not be good at it because I find it so hard to invest myself in that process. But because this was our music and something that I like really cared about so deeply, I was able to pour a lot of myself into it.
You would have to have a lot of Ty's respect to get them to be your engineer.
Yeah, very true.
So kind of pulling away from the more intense topics, I was looking on Twitter and I saw that you mentioned the artwork for Invisible Acts was inspired by the intro credits to a film. Kind of tell me about that and what that movie is and why that specific credit series kind of inspired the artwork.
Sure. I've always been really into movies, and I would say for maybe the past 2 years or so, most of the songs I've written have been like directly inspired by movies I've seen. Aesthetically, like you can write a song about any feeling, but like you have a mood board of like textures and colors and stuff in your head. I mean, at least I do. And one of the aesthetics I resonate with the most is this Napoleon Dynamite kind of aesthetic where it's just like it's quaint and it's kind of dirty and crappy and like it's not expensive, but it's like so familiar and like you can almost smell it. And Napoleon Dynamite used to be one of my favorite movies, and Gentlemen Broncos is by the same director, Jared and Jerusha Hess. I almost said I don't know who the director's name is, and I felt like a fraud. I think he also did Nacho Libre, which I can't speak for artistically, but yeah, Gentlemen Broncos is about a boy who writes a sci-fi novel, and it gets stolen by a famous sci-fi writer, and he has to like prove to his peers and his mom that he wrote this book. And I don't know. The intro is this beautiful sequence of, I don't know if they're real sci-fi book.
They're probably
covers,
not real.
But I mean, I thought they could be real, just like edited. But it says like the production assistant and like the actors' names and everyone instead of the book titles. And I've always loved that TV intro. I mean, that movie intro. I don't know if I can think of one I love more. And it's what introduced me to like the world of sci-fi pulp covers. I don't think I've ever read one, but I just love looking at them. And for Invisible Acts, it just really felt like it fit. Since I said, I always say like I see a lot of these songs as short stories. I don't know why. Just I don't know.
Yeah. Gentleman Broncos, for reference, is also a little whack in places. So if anyone decides to watch that, just be warned. There's some real transphobic bits in that movie.
Yeah.
But we did watch it together as reference material.
Yeah, I'm so sorry.
I don't know if we coerced Maddie into joining us on that adventure.
No.
She deserves better.
Just winding down then, what does the rest of 2020 look like for the band and you all? Are you planning on getting the second full length at least recorded and ready to get out? Or what tour-wise and show-wise, what do you have kind of going on as we move into, well, we're in February right now, but at least the nearest future here?
Yeah, for sure. We're planning to tour in late March, early April, hit up the Midwest. So that'll be a lot of fun. That'll be our first ever tour, a little baby tour of the Midwest, and we're really, really excited and very nervous, but mostly excited about doing that. I think it'll be a lot of fun. Other than that, I would really love to start getting in the studio for the next record, but I don't think it'll be ready 2020 for anyone's ears except mine.
And did you secure a van for the tour? I know you were.
We have a hookup.
I think
We
maybe yeah.
We think we have a hookup. And
You
we
never
think they
know.
came through. But hey, if anyone else has a van and they're listening to Ear Coffee right now and they're like, damn, I love Fourth Curtis, they can borrow my really good condition van for very little money, hit us up. Emails
Awesome.
on the website.
And personally, I want to get writing for our third LP
Yeah.
because I have about 2 songs done for it, but I need to get going. I like to have a backlog.
Yeah, for sure.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for taking the time to talk with me.
Thank you,
Yeah,
Joe.
thank you for having
Thanks
us.
The Ear Coffee Podcast is a companion to the blog of the same name. If you like this episode, please leave us a rate and review so we can stand out among the other music podcasts. You can follow us at Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram @Ear Coffee. Thank you for listening, and we'll see you next time.